a WikiVidi documentaries production. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy. Metal Gear Survive. Metal Gear Survive is an action-adventure survival game developed and published by Konami. It was the first Metal Gear game to be developed following the series creator Hideo Kojima's departure from Konami in late 2015. The game takes place in the time period between Metal Gear Solid V, Ground Zeroes and Metal Gear Solid V, The Phantom Pain. It was released worldwide for Microsoft Windows, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One in February 2018. Metal Gear Survive received mixed reviews. Fairly positive responses were given to its gameplay and mechanics, with its rewarding sense of progression in single-player and satisfaction from multiplayer and co-op receiving praise, while the majority of the criticism was directed at the game's story, characters, and inclusion of microtransactions. Gameplay. Metal Gear Survive is a survival action-adventure game set in an open-world environment and played from a third-person perspective. It features a cooperative multiplayer mode, in which the player can be joined by up to 3 other players to explore the game's world and to complete missions. It can also be played solo, in which the player is accompanied by 3 AI teammates, which the player can give orders to. The game features microtransactions and requires an always online connection. Plot. Following the evacuation of Big Boss and Kazuhira Miller from the besieged Mother Base, the surviving members of MSF who were left behind at wreckage of Mother Base collect their dead and prepare to bury them at sea with aid from the UN. While inspecting the dead soldiers, a member of the UN's aid team requests to take the body of a fallen soldier who was apparently killed in the attack. The fallen soldier assisted in the defense of Mother Base during the attack before a large wormhole opened above the sinking facility. Though the soldier was able to avoid being sucked into the wormhole, their left arm was severed after the wormhole closed and they fell to their death. 6 months after, the fallen soldier awakens in a government facility, seemingly unharmed. The facility is managed by Warden Cliffsection, a government research group dedicated to the investigation of mysterious infectious organisms and wormhole technology. The UN aide that recovered the fallen soldier is revealed to be a chief researcher of Warden Cliffsection. The researcher, known as Good Luck, enlists the fallen soldier to enter a wormhole to be transported to Dite, a hostile and desolate alternate dimension that serves as a dumping ground for wormholes. The fallen soldier is chosen due to the fact that they were infected with a strange parasitic organism upon contact with the wormhole, an organism that restored the soldier's severed arm, but rendered them a potential danger to mankind. The soldier's objective in Dite is to find and synthesize a potential cure for the infection and to rescue other people who may have been transported to Dite through wormholes. The soldier, given the moniker of Captain by Good Luck, is transported through a wormhole into Dite and is instructed to make their way to an established base camp. Along the way, the captain encounters Reeve, an Zov soldier that was presumably sucked into the wormhole above Mother Base. The two make an unsteady alliance and continue to base camp. They encounter hostile creatures known as Wanderers, former humans infected with a strange parasitic organism that renders them zombie-like and with prominent crystalline structures protruding out of their heads. The captain and Reeve make it to base camp and discover it abandoned. Upon further investigation they are greeted by Virgil At9, a dormant artificial intelligence that was part of an earlier investigation team sent to Dite prior to the captain's arrival, known as the Karen Corps. Virgil had remained dormant due to an emergency shutdown following the disappearance and dissolving of the Karen Corps under mysterious circumstances. Due to the shutdown, much of Virgil's internal memory is lost, and their records of the Karen Corps and their research is scattered across Dite wasteland, save for a few pockets of breathable air. Much of Dite is covered in a thick, toxic fog known as dust. Virgil aids the captain in re-establishing base camp and resuming normal operations. In order to expand base camp and to restore Virgil's memory and capabilities, the captain is tasked with finding memory boards scattered across Dite. Eventually the captain also comes across numerous human survivors such Miranda, a compassionate and enthusiastic nurse, Nicholas, a police officer, and Chris, a paraplegic boy affected by an unknown disease and works well with computers. All along the way the captain battles wanderers and encounters a large, unknown creature that roams the dust. After some time, Virgil is able to open a wormhole that could potentially transport the inhabitants of base camp back to Earth using an on-site wormhole digger. However, the wormhole collapses and fails due to insufficient energy. The captain is tasked with securing Iris energy, a powerful and extremely pure source of energy that could power the wormhole digger without fail. While doing so, the base camp survivors are contacted by Joseph Gruen, head of Ward and Cliff Section. Gruen reveals that Goodluck has acted against section orders and that the captain's mission was orchestrated entirely by Goodluck and not authorized by the section. The discovery of a secret black box within Virgil, seemingly planted by Goodluck himself, supports these claims. With Goodluck terminated, Gruen vows to bring the survivors home. Upon obtaining sufficient Iris energy, a new wormhole is opened, and Gruen goads Virgil into maximizing energy output to the wormhole, despite the fact that it is not necessary and there is plenty of energy to spare. The surge in energy attracts the attention of the Lord of Dust, the same large, towering creature the captain encountered in the dust. With the creature advancing on base camp at an alarming pace, the survivors are forced to quickly make their way to the wormhole, barely making it before the Lord of Dust is able to follow them in. The survivors find themselves transported to a largely forested jungle area. It is revealed that they have not been transported home, but rather have simply been moved to another area of Dite. Virgil plays a number of tapes planted by Goodluck within the discovered black box inside Virgil. In them, Goodluck reveals that he has committed suicide, and that these posthumous messages are to instruct the captain and survivors to destroy the Lord of Dust. It is revealed that Dite is actually Earth in the 22nd century, and that the Lord of Dust is the cause. The Lord of Dust is a creature whose body exudes large amounts of energy and dust, with the dust actually not being dust at all, but rather microscopic nanomachines. The Lord of Dust's body is composed primarily of a large amalgamation of medical nanomachines, a technology used extensively in the future. The Lord of Dust feeds off of Iris energy and frequently utilizes wormholes to transport back in time, to build itself up with nanomachines. This has caused a time loop on Earth where the planet is stuck in a cycle of rebirth and destruction as the Lord of Dust travels in time, builds itself up, then destroys the world and turns it into the wasteland that is Dite. The treachery of Gruen is revealed in that he was hoping to bring the Lord of Dust into his timeline in order to use it for its vast stock of energy. Goodluck's final wish is for the captain to destroy the Lord of Dust and to end the cycle of destruction. After the discovery of more memory boards, Virgil is able to locate a weapon that had been sought by the Karen Corps in their own attempts to destroy the Lord of Dust, and a surviving Karen Corps member that may be able to help. The captain encounters Dan, the Corps survivor, about to kill Seth, a Mother Base survivor. This leads the survivors to assume that Dan was a traitor to the Karen Corps, and ultimately caused the group's disappearance. After having driven off Dan and rescuing Seth, the captain continues the search for the weapon to destroy the Lord of Dust. The weapon is revealed to be a metal gear. Dan re-emerges, wary of the captain due to rescuing Seth. Seth is similarly suspicious and wary. While the weapon is being extracted, Dan is driven off by wanderers. After the weapon is retrieved, the captain is informed that Seth has betrayed the survivors, taken Chris hostage, and demands to see the captain in person. The survivors formulate a plan for Reeve to secretly follow the captain to Seth. Upon meeting the captain, Seth reveals that after being sucked into a wormhole during the Ground Zeroes incident, Seth was taken in by the Karen Corps as a survivor. He allowed himself to become infected and influenced by the dust, not becoming a wanderer and retaining his humanity. He plotted against the Karen Corps and ultimately caused the disappearance and dissolution of the group. He also infected Virgil with the dust, forcing the AI to enter emergency shutdown. Holding Chris at gunpoint, Seth demands the captain join in and the dust. The captain complies, and is nearly subjected to full infection before Reeve shoots and seemingly kills Seth. Reeve and Chris return to safety before Seth resurrects, and transforms into a full-blown wanderer. The captain is forced to kill Seth. Virgil reveals that contact with Seth has dramatically accelerated the infection process for both itself and the captain, and that it is only a matter of days before both of them succumb to the dust infection. Dan, proven to not be a conspirator, allies himself with the survivors in the hopes of destroying the Lord of Dust. With the weapon secured, the survivors make preparations to fight the Lord of Dust. The captain, Reeve, Miranda, Nicholas, and Dan all opt to stay behind and ensure the Lord of Dust's destruction. Chris is chosen to be the one to escape back to their former reality. With preparations complete, Virgil opens a wormhole to attract the Lord of Dust and to serve as Chris's escape. The Lord of Dust arrives and the survivors utilize weapons retrieved from the recovered Metal Gear to trap the Lord of Dust. The captain escorts Chris to the wormhole and allows him to be taken through, with Chris promising to come back and rescue the survivors. From here, the story has two endings depending on the player's actions. If the player decides to follow Chris through the wormhole, the captain will abandon the survivors and jump through. The Lord of Dust escapes the trap, and the remaining survivors are presumed dead. The captain re-emerges from the wormhole in a large open desert, dressed in their mother base uniform. The captain picks up a photograph that appeared next to them and wanders off into the desert. As the screen cuts to black, the roar of the Lord of Dust is heard. If the player decides to stay, they are tasked with defending the trap and ensuring the Lord of Dust's demise. After successfully defending the area, the captain opens fire on the Lord of Dust with a railgun from the Metal Gear, severing the Lord of Dust in two. The survivors are shocked when they see the Lord of Dust reform and begin to escape the trap. Virgil plays one final message from Goodluck explaining that he never fulfilled his promise. Goodluck is revealed to be Chris, having made it through the wormhole and ending up above the USS Eldridge in Philadelphia in 1943. Chris fully committed to fulfilling his promise to the survivors, eventually working his way into Warden Cliff section. He included voice recordings within Virgil for the Karen Corps and any potential survivors to receive in the hopes that they would be able to destroy the Lord of Dust. The Lord of Dust, being composed of machines and therefore having no conscience or concept of death, cannot actually die. Virgil volunteers to be consumed by the Lord of Dust and introduce the concept of death to it, having created its own understanding and interpretation of death due to meeting and been with so many people despite being a machine. Virgil understands that by doing so it will very well be destroyed along with the Lord of Dust, and bids farewell before launching itself inside the Lord of Dust. The captain fires the railgun once more and destroys the Lord of Dust for good. The credits roll on the survivors returning to base camp. An after-credits scene shows Virgil launching from the carcass of the Lord of Dust and returning to base camp, explaining to the captain that though it is highly damaged it is still functional and will be able to continue assisting the captain in their mission and, hopefully, returning home. In an alternate timeline, Joseph Gruen is heard reprimanding Goodluck in his mistake regarding the next wormhole being predicted to open above Mother Base during the Ground Zeroes incident. After Gruen's departure, Goodluck deduces that the survivors have destroyed the Lord of Dust and reaffirms his vows to bring them home. Brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. Would you like to know more?